You know that story. So we're doing 9:10 to 9:17. You know that story that Dina Bandhu, no, yeah, Dina Bandhu Prabhu here in Vrindavan, the famous Dina Bandhu. He told, I heard him personally, where a devotee, a disciple of Prabhupada, went to one of the famous temples in Vrindavan, was taking darshan of the deities, and the pujari came up to him and said, "Oh, I see that you have a lot of devotion for my Thakur ji, so I bless you. I give you the blessing that in your next life you can take birth in Vrindavan, in my family, and you can go on the altar and worship this deity yourself." So this devotee was, wow, thank you. So he ran back to Krishna Balaram temple, and he had a darshan of Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Did you ever hear this story, Golokananda Priya?
Just keep on telling, then I'll remember. So far, no.
He said, Prabhupada, Prabhupada, I got this blessing from this Brahmin that in my next life I can take birth here in Vrindavan and worship the deity. Prabhupada nonchalantly said, you go back to that temple and you tell that Brahmin, that Pujari, that Bhaktivedanta Swami blesses him, that in his next life he can take birth in America and spread the Krishna consciousness movement. But the story I wanted to tell about the threefold miseries, when Prabhupada landed in Los Angeles once, he landed with a plane, and there was a lot of fog, and yet the plane landed without any problem. And so when Prabhupada was being driven in the car to Watsika Avenue, to the temple, he asked, like, how did the plane manage to land in all this fog? And the devotees explain, well, Prabhupada, there's this radar system, and because of that, they're able to land even when there's fog. And Prabhupada said, there's no happiness in the material world. But if there's any happiness in the material world, it's in America. So, from a material point of view, consider yourself lucky, Golokananda Priya. I guess it's all relative, huh? Janma Mrityu, Jaravyadi is everywhere.
I wanted to come to Vrindavan.
Well, right now you're starting to feel the heat here, like big time. It's like,
yeah.
oh my God, it's like
By next
43.
year.
Oh, you're gonna move? You want to
I'll
move?
move.
You want to move?
I just stay partly there, partly here.
Like 6 months, huh?
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, better not to come then in summer.
Yeah, but that's kind of tough from North Carolina though, because you'll have the winter in North Carolina, which is sunny but very cold. You'll do that. You'll spend the winter in Vrindavan, right? Which is kind of cold, but it's okay. You can escape to Thailand once a month, for $500.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Krishna. How about we talk about the Bhagavad Gita? Do you think that's a good idea? Let's go. Chapter 9. So we'll just do as usual. We'll read verse 10, and then all of us. I'll start, then Vignesh, then. No, actually, are we starting with 10? No, it's a little less, right? It's 9.
7.
Oh, it takes 7. Yes, 7 to 19. Good point. Okay. So let me go, because I put in verse 10, and that's the Parisian verse, which you Prabhu's answered, by the way, with flying colors. I hope this is the last thing you remember when quitting your body, that Krishna mentions the beautiful city of Paris. In V means like all glories to, so it's like V Paris, like all glories to Paris, Krishna's saying. Very confidential knowledge here that you're getting only at the Audarya Center for Bhagavad Studies. All right, chapter 9. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Okay, text 7. Translation: O son of Kunti, at the end of the millennium, every material manifestation enters into my nature, and at the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I again create.
Text 8. The whole cosmic order is under me. By my will, it is manifested again and again, and by my will, it is annihilated at the end.
O Dhananjaya, all this work cannot bind me. I'm ever detached, seated as a neutral.
Text 10. Thank you, Krishna, for giving it to me. Maya Dyakshina Prakriti Suyate Sachara Charan Hetunanina Konteya Jagad Vipari Vartate. This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and is producing all moving and unmoving beings. By its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. And this is where some devotees get it wrong in terms of, this false, at least I believe, this false idea that the soul never falls from the spiritual world. Because there's two manifestations there. I mean, there's the great manifestation, like the creation, where Brahma actually creates the universe, right? But then there's then at the end of that's a small creation, and when that universe is finished, it's unmanifest for a while and then manifest again, right? But then there's like the whole, like when Mahavishnu breathes out. There, explain. Because there's clarify which are there's two. There's a small manifestation, and then there's like right at the end of Brahma's night. Vignesh ji, clarify here a little bit because I'm having a blank here.
Regarding?
Well, you often hear. I'm sorry to bring this up, but might as well. You hear this that those who believe that the soul never falls from the spiritual world. They get the argument that that they're going to the spiritual world for the first time. But those who believe in the fall of the soul say no, they're actually not going for the first time. They were there, but then they were in an unmanifest state for a while, during the time when the universe is annihilated. But it doesn't mean that they didn't exist in the material world, in that same universe for that matter, maybe, when the material manifestation was manifested before. Because the universe is manifested, unmanifested, manifested, unmanifested, manifested, unmanifested. And Prabhupada explains that some souls, actually all souls practically, are in the material world during many of these like manifestations, manifestations, unmanifestations, with their origin, with a fall from Goloka Vrindavan. So just because they are awakening doesn't mean that they're awakening from a so-called marginal Tatashta Shakti so-called area and they're going to Goloka for the first time. No, they're just awakening from the last creation and annihilation of the material universe. That's the point. And that does not imply that they didn't have a direct relationship with Krishna. I mean, actually, it does imply. I mean, it does not imply. You see what I mean? That they had a relationship, an intimate relationship with Krishna. Anyway, a small thing. So let me read the verse again. I mean, unless you want to get into discussion of the fall of the soul, but this material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and is producing all moving and unmoving beings. By its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. Text 11.
Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature and my supreme dominion for all that be.
Those who are thus bewildered or attracted by the demonic and atheistic views, in the deluded condition, their hopes for liberation The fruitive activities and the culture of knowledge are all defeated.
Let me tell you a quick story, if I may share with you about this verse that Vignesh just read, Avajanantima Muda. When I was a book distributor as a brahmachari in the Los Angeles temple, I had a fierce competition with another disciple of Bhakti Charuswami, whose name was Charu Chandra. We were called the two moons of New Dwarka because we were like the two top book distributors in all of America. And we had this like fierce competition, which turned a little bit unhealthy sometimes. And I remember we were taking our van, we were being driven to the LA airport one day, and we were sitting in the back seat there. Maybe must have been 10 of us. And he and I were talking, so I don't know. And then all of a sudden, he started laughing. He said, "Yeah, because," and he's got this Jamaican accent because he's from Belize. And he said, "That's because the materialists, they don't understand. They see Krishna as an ordinary human being." And then he quoted, he goes, "Avajanantima mudha manushim tanusha mashritam parambhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram." And I became so jealous, but it was kind of healthy. But I was like, oh my, in my mind, I was like, oh my God, he knows this verse by heart, and it's an important verse, and I haven't learned it yet. So I remember that day I was like learning it. I was memorizing the verse so I could also know it. Prabhupada talked about transcendental competition, right? Okay, text 13. Mahatmanas tumam parta daivim prakritim ashritaha bhajantyananda manaso gyatva bhutadim avyayam. O son of Prita, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. Question. Let's put it this way. Okay, easy. Who is referred to by the word daivim prakritim? Going once.
I think
We have a buyer.
meaning could be like one meaning could be Yogamaya or Srimati Radharani.
I like it. Do you agree, Molokananda Priya?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think acharyas in the line say that this Daivi Prakriti is Radharani. So the great souls, they're under the shelter of Srimati Radharani. Very good. Next verse.
Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me is his great soul, perpetually worship me with devotion. Okay,
Huh? So I had this.
it
Yeah.
was his turn, and I took.
Oh, that's okay, because you really wanted to talk about kirtan. That's why you cut in front of Vignesh. Do you know that story? You know how this verse is at least let me share this with you. I hope you like these little anecdotes. In volume 6 of Prabhupada Lilamrita, does anyone remember, in relationship to the Juhu in Bombay, the Juhu property? At one point, Prabhupada quoted this verse. Do you remember?
I know the Jew property. There was a fight or something.
Okay, yeah. So if you remember the actual,
Yeah.
the Lilamrita, Satsur Maharaj describes at one point, he quotes Prabhupada in the conversation.
No.
Vigneshji, you're from Bombay.
I know the story, I don't remember the verse which you are referring to.
Before the fight with Mr. Nair, or, along with the fight with this Mr. Nair who, tried to cheat the devotees and Prabhupada from the land, getting the money, then not giving them the deed. And Prabhupada, and when he died, Prabhupada said, I was praying to Nishingadev to kill him. And he died. But before that, or in the same time, some of the local tenants complained to the police. And the police came and said, there's complaints that you are doing, this is public nuisance. Your kirtans are public nuisance. Those were the exact word, public nuisance. And Prabhupada, according to the Lamrita, became furious. And he was saying, it's just see Kali Yuga in India. We are doing kirtan. And Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says, Satatam kirtayanto mam. And they're calling it public nuisance? They're calling it public nuisance when Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, Satatam kirtayanto mam. Cool, huh? I use that verse in that connection. So yeah, please, you read it already, right? Always chanting my glory. So always doing kirtan. That's what I was trying to suck out of you guys. The word kirtan is right in this verse. So in a way, this verse about from Bhagavad Gita is in a way for those who really like to do kirtan and who really like to remind everyone, remind themselves about the Yuga Dharma being kirtan or Sankirtan. This is the verse par excellence, Satatam. Satatam means what? What does it mean? What does Satatam means, Vignesh?
Always.
Always. Yeah, perpetually, non-stop. Okay, maybe you can read the next one then, Vignesh ji.
Text 15. Others who are engaged in the cultivation of knowledge worship the Supreme Lord as the one without a second, diverse in many and in the universal form.
It's a complicated one, huh? But let's just speculate philosophically. That's allowed. Philosophical speculation is allowed. Like that's another thing. Like Prabhupada explained to Ridhanama, mental speculation we are not allowed, but philosophical speculation we are allowed. In the sense that we're not allowed to speculate by not referring to Shastra and just imagining with our own mind what the truth is. But philosophical speculation, making use of Shastra as our epistemological authority and trying to understand reality or different passages of Shastra with the help of Shastra as, our authority is actually allowed, As a matter of fact, Kaviraj Goswami says somewhere in Chaitanya Charitamrita that, you should not shy away from these discussions, So let's try to understand, like, others who are engaged in the cultivation of knowledge, jnana yajna, worship the Supreme Lord as one without a second, diverse in many, and in the universal form. Let's read this purport and see if we get any explanation from it. Vignesh, can you read for us the purport?
Sure. This verse is a summary of the previous verses. The Lord tells Arjuna that those who are purely in Krishna consciousness and do not know anything other than Krishna are called Mahatma. Yet there are other persons who are not exactly in the position of Mahatma, but who worship Krishna also in different ways. Some of them are already described as distressed, financially destitute, the inquisitive, and those who are engaged in the cultivation of knowledge. But there are others who are still lower, and these are divided into three. First, he worships himself as one with the Supreme Lord. Second, he concocts some form of the Supreme Lord and worships that. And third, he who accepts the universal form, the Vishwarupa of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and worships that. Out of the above three, the lowest, those who worship themselves as the Supreme Lord, thinking themselves to be monists, are most predominant. Such people think themselves to be the Supreme Lord, and in this mentality, they worship themselves. There is also a type of God worship, for they can understand that they are not the material body, but actually spiritual soul. At least such a sense is prominent. Generally, the impersonalists worship the Supreme Lord in this way. The second class includes the worshippers of demigods, those who by imagination consider any form to be the form of the Supreme Lord. And the third class includes those who cannot conceive of anything beyond the manifestation of this material universe. They consider the universe to be the supreme organism or entity and worship that. The universe is also a form of the Lord.
Okay, so let's go back to the verse here. So when Krishna is saying here, engage in the cultivation of knowledge, so can we be safe to say that he's referring sort of to Gyanis? Yes? Right here, you're right, because he's talking about Mayavadis in the purport, so it has to do sort of like with this Gyan, or right? It's not so much Bhakti, it's more Gyan, right?
Yes.
And so the one without a second, in the universal form, that's understood. That refers to what Prabhupada talks about here as the third category of worshipper, right? He says at the end here, the third class includes those who cannot conceive of anything beyond the manifestation of this material universe. They consider the universe to be the supreme organism, and they worship that, right? So that would refer to the last thing, that they worship the Supreme Lord in the universal form. But then the thing about one without a second, diverse in many, how does that relate to what Prabhupada explained in the purport here?
The first one, like Ekatvena, is that right? One without a second, the impersonalist.
So how is that
Prithaktvena
impersonalist?
means,
So let's stick with that one before you develop more.
yeah.
So one without a second, that would seem more to be a monotheistic interpretation, like Bhagavan, isn't it?
Yeah, but in the category what Krishna has explained, like Jnana Yagya, what we generally understand is about oneness, right? Impersonal oneness. They consider everything to be one. They don't,
Okay,
like
so one without a second, I
Brahman is
see,
everything.
I see. So one without a second is not like, okay, it's just one, like Brahman, correct?
Brahman. That's the only reality.
Oh, so
Brahman is the only reality.
It's Brahman, and that is manifested in many so-called individual jivas who are actually not individuals, because when they realize the truth, they realize that they are one, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Diverse in many, yeah.
Yeah, diverse in many
And there
means,
is
you
a
know
second
how these
category.
Mayavadis, they say like, Brahman appears as Krishna, right? Or he appears as Shiva, or he appears as Ganesh, or he appears as Jesus, might as well throw in some Jesus for good luck. And ultimately, these Jesus or Krishna or Saraswati or Ganesh is ridiculous. They don't exist. It's secondary. What really counts is the Aham Brahmasmi, correct?
Maybe like generally impersonalists say, talk about two Brahman, like Saguna and Nirguna. So maybe
Yeah.
Ekatvena could describe Nirguna Brahman from the impersonalist point of view, and Saguna Brahman like various like forms of worship like Ganesh, Ganpati, Surya.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, the Saguna Brahman, which is ultimately an illusion as well, right? Because the only real thing is what's beyond the Nirguna Brahman. Such rascals, such rascals. Okay, good. So here in this verse there's really two sort of things, but in the purport Prabhupada talks about three, because one without a second, diverse in many, that's one concept. That's the concept of Brahman manifesting as so-called Saguna Brahman, right? And then there's the universal form. So there's two ways that they worship the Lord. One way is the Brahman that's manifested in so-called so many Saguna manifestations. That's one concept. And then also in the universal form, that's the second concept. But in the purport, notice Prabhupada talks about those who worship themselves as a Supreme Lord. He talks about in number 3 as one who accepts the universal form. But then he adds something that's not written in the verse itself, something that Krishna doesn't talk about, but what Prabhupada categorizes as number 2 in his tripartite categorization, as quote unquote, here he says, he who concocts some form of the Supreme Lord and worships that.
Like my understanding is that 3 categories, right? In the verse, it mentions 3 categories. So Prabhupada is giving Ekatvena as one without a second. It's the first category. Prithaktvena has second, diverse in many. That is Prithaktvena.
Okay.
And third is Vishwatamukham. Like that's how Prabhupada explaining. Like Ekatvena is considering I'm myself is God, everything is God.
But
So
in the
along that
second thing, he who concocts some form of the Supreme Lord, included in that is also those who
polytheism,
believe.
kind of polytheism.
Yeah, but what's also included in there is not just a concocted form, but rather an accepted form, which they don't see as supreme, unfortunately, but is an accepted form, such as that of Ganesh, or of Krishna, or of Vishnu, or as Lakshmi, or Sarasvati, right? And those are not necessarily concocted, they're just misunderstood, right? But they're not concocted necessarily.
In
What
India,
about
there are some
universal
concoctions as
form?
well.
They
Even
worship
not
the
even Ganesh, but there are some other non-Vedic deities who are
Children,
also
don't speak
worshipped.
at the same time.
Yeah.
Golokananda Priya. I like being a teacher. I mean, I like being a, what's it called? A
No, it's
facilitator.
okay.
It's kind of cool. I get to
Finish,
exercise some authority sometimes. Because, I don't get any
Vignesh.
attention. No one listens to me. I don't have any children. I don't have a wife to boss around. So, like, it's nice to kind of, to be a teacher.
Vignesh, continue.
You can speak, Mataji.
Yeah.
No, go ahead,
I was
Goloka.
telling on the
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, Golokananda Priya. You spoke first. Come on.
I was just thinking about, they say the worship's a universal form, that I know in America a lot of people don't even mention the name God. They say the universe,
Yeah, the
you know.
universe. The
Yeah,
universe
so what
spoke.
does that mean? Yeah, what does it mean with that, the universe?
Nonsense. Because if something speaks, then it has volition, right? It has free will. It has personality. Good point.
And Prabhupada is telling here about the universal form. How do we understand it? How people worship the universal form? Those who doesn't know about Krishna's universal form. So, they worship.
Oh, I see.
What?
Because here he's referring to the universal. But do people? It's a good question. Do people in the Vedic, let's say Vedic culture, those who are not Vaishnavas, but who have some knowledge of the Vedas and who are either Advaita Vedantists or demigod worshippers, when they accept the universal form, right? Do they actually understand that it's Krishna or it's Vishnu, right? I don't think so, because look, at the end, right? Let me share with you the screen. This would be my answer, and I hope I'm answering, I'm addressing the question you raised. But look at what Prabhupada says here. The third class includes those who cannot conceive. They cannot conceive of anything beyond the manifestation of this universe, right? They consider the universe to be the supreme organism. So not many make the link between the universal form as being a sort of an impersonal material manifestation of the supreme personal God, who happens to be the supreme, Krishna, the flute player. That's an extra addition to the notion of monotheism. But at least the sort of the New Agers or Native Americans that worship this sort of new, this universal form, they don't say, we worship the universal form, but we understand that behind it there's a supreme person, right?
Yeah.
But I guess it's
They just
something.
The sun or the moon or some.
But it's something. The Great Spirit, right? So many, at least several Native American tribes talk about the Great Spirit, the Great Spirit.
God particle without God.
Yeah, the Great Spirit without the personality. But at least, hey, it's much better than what you see in Europe right now and in New York City and Los Angeles. This woke, atheistic, relativist, horrible, secular mentality, technocrat or communist or both kind of ideology. At least when at least there's, like, even Prabhupada says, right? They're making some. Even the Mayavadis. I mean, here he's very kind with the Mayavadis. Sometimes he talks about Mayavadis. I kick on their face. I urinate on them. I mean, sorry for Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta, also the Lion Guru, right? There's a strong, very strong opposition to Mayavad philosophy. But here he's just being kind. Look, he says, at least they're realizing that they're not the body, right? At least, so there's some advancement there. So, I'd rather be around, great spirit worshippers, or even, I guess, Mayavadis, than being around hardcore atheists who actually have thought out, an atheistic worldview and are just proud to live it. It's horrible. Then again, Prabodhananda Saraswati Thakur, he says he'd rather be in a cage full of fire than with Mayavadis. I don't know.
We are surrounded by Mayavadis nowadays.
Is it?
Yeah.
Like over there in North Carolina, you got a lot of what, yoga ashrams that
I
are all
don't know.
Mayavadi, or?
Yeah, there's so many people I know in their lives there, Mayavadis.
Yeah.
I think almost many of the people are Mayavadis. If we probe further with them, discuss further with them, we'll come to know that
Yeah.
some other form of Mayavad is there always.
When I was in Mayapur, I did a few sessions of question and answers, and I could understand now a little better how Prabhupada said that Vivekananda has brought, has hurled, has degraded all of West Bengal into Tamaguna. Because that guy was such a word juggler. And so, you speak, they ask questions. And then, at one point I said, you know what, let's, and I was actually reading quotes from Vivekananda. And I was saying, with all due respect to Vivekananda, here's some famous quotes. Let's see if they tally up with Bhagavad Gita. And there was a couple of older men, the older generation, who became sort of really agitated. And they were saying, no, but, and they were basically saying Mayavad philosophy. At the end of the day, like you said, Vignesh, when you scratch a little bit, you realize ultimately they see no distinction between, the Atma and the Paramatma, or the Jivatma and the, Purushottama or Paramatma. Such rascals, with all due respect. I mean, not them, they're victims. The real rascal was this Vivekananda. And it's so sad because it's, in the place of where Lord Chaitanya himself came. Lord Chaitanya himself, the greatest merciful Lord himself, the supreme person. And so there was so at the same time, so they have this weird combination of very strong bhakti to a personal God, and even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, destroyed and confused and washed up by this nonsense Vivekananda, Mayavadi crap, excuse my language. All right, well, I think we milked this one quite well. Thank you, Vignesh, for clarifying.
Thank you very much for the details. Thank you, Vignesh and Chandra. It describes this verse in detail. I understand it better like that.
Yeah, me too. Okay, whose turn is it?
It's your turn.
My turn. Text 16. But it is I who am the ritual, I the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors, the healing herb. This is not a justification for marijuana smoking. It is I who am the ritual, I the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors. I have to stop sharing. The healing herb, the transcendental chant. I am the butter and the fire and the offerings. So we got to have that vision, like if we're doing a puja, that act itself is Krishna. When we're performing Sankirtan, the yagya par excellence, that's Krishna. It's interesting. What do you guys think about, the offering to the ancestors? Because that verse, Shraddha Vishwas Kohe, Sudridanishchoy, Sarva Karma Krita Hoy, right? Shraddha, the definition of Shraddha. Shraddha Shabde, Shraddha Shabde Shraddha Shabde. What has it go again? Shraddha Shabde. Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. I'll find it like this. Do you know this verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita? Here's the. Here we go. Come on, open up. Okay, here we go. Shraddha Shabde Vishvasa Kahe Sudrina Nishchoy Krishna Bhakti Koile Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. Shraddha, right, by the word Shabde. By the word Shraddha, what is meant? Shraddha is confident, firm faith that by rendering transcendental loving service to Krishna, one automatically performs all subsidiary activities. Right? What is that verse? Nrinam Pitrinam Yakinkaro. You know that verse?
5 types of death.
Yeah, exactly. So how does that verse? Yakinkaro Narajan. No, what is it? I'm confusing verses. Yeah, Nakinkaro Nayam Nrini Charajan. Right? It's in Madhya 141. And let me share it with you here. Devarshi Bhutapta. And you'll see where I'm getting at here. Devarshi Bhutapta Nrinam Pitrinam Nakinkaro Nayam Nrini Charajan. Actually, this is a verse from, well, it should be from the Bhagavatam, but anyway, it's quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila. So, Nakinkaro Nayam Nrini Charajan Sarvatmana Yak Sharanam Sharanyam Gato Mukundam Parihritya Kartam. One who has given up all material duties. So you see, this is the same thing as Shraddha Vishvase, all the subsidiary activities, and taken full shelter at the lotus feet of Mukunda, who gives shelter to all, is not indebted to the demigods, great sages, ordinary living beings, relatives, friends. See, so the relatives, you're not indebted. So technically, when you take up Krishna consciousness, you don't need to offer pinda. Right? You don't need to offer pinda. So therefore, coming back to this verse that we're looking at right now, the question comes up, well, then what's going on here? Like, why do we see, the offering to the ancestors? I mean, maybe Krishna is not talking to pure devotees here. I'm sorry. Oh, come on. Let me stop sharing and share again. So the question is, should devotees perform pinda?
What I know is that they said devotees usually doesn't offer pinda, but if somebody left the bodies, they just offer prashadam for in 3 days or something. That's it.
I heard
Till
Bhakti
all the
Siddhanta Saraswati
devotees.
Thakur asked his disciples to go to Gaya and offer pinda. I mean, Lord Chaitanya himself did it, but what's funny about Lord Chaitanya, he went there before, so-called, he became a devotee. He became a devotee there. So he can't be used as a reference here, because technically he went to Gaya before he converted. But I heard that Bhakti Siddhanta, encouraged that. Same, performing the Shraddha ceremony. It can't hurt, right? But like you said, Golokananda Priya, I think the offering of Prashadam, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it just like it just serves the Vaishnavas. That's it. You offer prashadam to everyone. That only after 3 days or something, somebody pass up to 1 or 2 days. But like regularly every year doing like this, pinda, the Shrad ceremony. I never seen nobody in ISKCON do that. I know some of the Brahmana devotees, they still do that. They invite all the devotees to their home and offer prashadam. That's all they do. They offer prashadam only to the Brahmana. by giving.
Maybe in India though, maybe some ISKCON members in ISKCON, maybe some ISKCON members in India go to Gaya and stuff. Do they? Do you know, Vignesh?
What of Gaya? Like we, for us, is in South India. There is another place called Gokarna. The people generally go.
Huh.
Gaya
Speaking
is,
of which,
I think, quite far for us.
but do they go as devotees?
I'm not sure on that.
Speaking of which, it's interesting. You, if I may say to Golokananda Priya, something that you wrote, Vignesh, you mentioned that you were talking about karma, you know, and how Krishna doesn't interfere with one's karma unless one is a pure devotee. And I remember when I was doing a Navadvip Parikrama a long time ago, I was having a discussion with a South Indian Vaishnava, South Indian ISKCON member, and then there was another, I think it was Paramgati Maharaj, and we were having a discussion, and it turns out apparently that there's sort of a disagreement, and that in South Indian Vaishnavism, the general belief is that Krishna will only change your karma when you become a pure devotee, or if you become a pure devotee, and that's exactly what you wrote, Vignesh. But it seems like, from what I get it, that according to the, you know, at least the Gaudiya understanding is that no, even a neophyte, even a Kanishtari like Krishna can, if he wants, and maybe does sometimes, change the karma or change the destiny of a soul who's not necessarily, you know, a pure devotee yet. So just a small parenthesis.
Like in my, like what I've understood is like the different grades, right? Like what I understood in Anartha Nivritti, they talk about different types of sinful activities. I think in last lecture only we discussed with Madhindra Prabhu that we have different types of papa, something we think mentally, then something we actually do it, like something we just like sprouting like a seed. I think it depends on what stage. If it's a pure devotee, then definitely even that very core desire to a sin, that will can be eliminated at the root. But if it is not a pure devotee, then it will take some time to extinguish all the different levels of sinful activities at once. So he will generate more, at least some amount of, at least desire. Maybe desire may still be there to do some sinful activity. But gradually it may come down, but at once, uh, if we're talking about, I think it should be pure devotee, right? At once he can um, destroy all the sin right from the seed.
To be discussed another time. Good. Okay, so we got a couple of more, and then we'll take our break. It's Vignesh's turn, right?
Yeah.
Text 16. No, I think text 17.
17.
I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire.
Oh, you're reading
I am
the
the
19.
object of knowledge.
You're not reading the 72, right? Wait.
17.
Oh, you're reading 17. I'm sorry. I thought we had already read that. Please, again.
I am the father of this universe. I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier, and the syllable Om. I am also the Rik, the Sam, and the Yajur Vedas.
Jai. I'm so happy Krishna says I'm the syllable Om.
Yeah.
There's a French devotee here in Vrindavan. His name is Gadadhar Priya Prabhu. He and I used to do a metro yoga together. Did I ever show you our metro yoga demonstrations we did in Paris? Huh?
No.
No? Okay, let me show you. And this is related because I'll remember, you know, it's about Om, but I want to show off here a little bit here. For about 2 years, this devotee that you'll see, he and then Sarah, this Italian girl, and sometimes another one, we would go into the subway of Paris, into the trains. And when the trains would just close the door and the engine was not too loud, we would tell everybody, okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is already 7 p.m. and you have not done your yoga yet. But do not worry because the Metro Yoga team is here. No need to do any physical exercises. You just hear these mantras that we chant really bad with a little bit of attention and you get all the benefit of yoga. Ladies and gentlemen, Metro Yoga. And then we'd kick into doing a kirtan for 1 or 2 stops, making some jokes with them about reincarnation or vegetarianism. And meanwhile, Bhakti and Sarah would pass out these heart-shaped Mahaprasad cookies to people with a card also for our website. And then after 3 or 4 stops, as the train was stopping before the doors open, we would stop the kirtan. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention. We've had a wonderful time with you. Please do not follow us. Stay in the train. Go home. Remember to drink a lot of water tonight, and we'll see you next time. And then we'd walk out, and people would applaud, and then we wait for the next train to come, and we'd go, and ladies and gentlemen, it's already 7:30. You have not done, doing the same mantra again and again. And so at one point, there was this guy who represents an internet television station called Énergie Radio who saw us, and he was like, "Oh my God, I want to do a documentary on you guys." So he did it, and we were in the news. We were in the news. This was in 2009. So I'll show you this because it's kind of cool, and you'll see this Gadadhar Priya. You'll see him at the end. He's a brahmachari then, and we're doing something related to Om right now. But here, look at this. Golokananda, you'll understand because they're speaking in French. Vignesh, you'll just have to get it by the visuals. So these are just the main titles first. Barack Obama just got elected, John McEnroe is playing in Wimbledon, and then they go into us. Can you hear the sound?
You cannot hear the sound.
Oh, you can't hear the
No.
sound.
Verrait les réactions des militants démocrates parisiens après sa victoire aux primaires.
Éviter le stress du métro grâce à la musique à de petites attentions.
See, that's me and that's Gadadhar Priya behind. And that's Bhakta John. He was from South India. I don't know where he is now. He went back to South India. He would come with us sometimes. And they called us Metro Zen.
Paris a rencontré les membres de l'association Métro Yoga.
Roland Garros quitte la porte de Hauteuil pour débarquer place de l'Hôtel de Ville. Quelques anciens champions y sont nés, y ont même donné des coups. Vous en conviendrez sans doute, le métro, s'il est bien pratique, n'est pas l'endroit le plus relaxant du monde, surtout aux heures de pointe. Pourtant, c'est justement à ce moment-là, après une longue journée de travail, qu'un peu de détente serait la bienvenue. Partant de ce constat, le groupe Métro Yoga a décidé d'aider les voyageurs à rester zen.
Et vous les avez peut-être déjà croisés dans les couloirs du métro ou dans un train. Ils chantent des mantras, jouent quelques airs, distribuent même parfois un goûter. Et tout cela sans jamais demander le moindre centime. Ils n'ont qu'un seul but, nous calmer et nous faire partager un peu d'amour.
Vous les avez peut-être déjà croisés dans le métro, ils jouent de la musique, distribuent des biscuits 100% bio, le tout sans demander d'argent en échange, cela s'appelle le métro yoga.
Mesdames et messieurs, soyez zen, comme on dit à Paris, relaxez-vous.
Leur but est d'apporter la joie dans la société moderne en reliant les voyageurs avec la divinité Krishna. Même si le voyage est difficile pour certains, la musique finit toujours par adoucir les mœurs.
I mean, you see these people applauding. You've never been in Paris. Parisians are like New Yorkers or jerks from Bombay. Like they're really hard to touch their heart. And these people were like applauding and smiling.
Franchement, c'était un grand bonheur de...
So this lady, we could not have paid her 5,000 euros to say better words. Krishna sent her. Just on that lady, a very, bourgeois, well dressed, French lady. And she was like, she came off the train one day with us and she said, "This is wonderful what you're doing. I've been to India many times." And I was like, wow. The filmmaker was there. So can you please speak to the camera? She's like, sure. And she says, I've been to India many times. I love Indian music. I love mantras. I love Hare Krishna. So that's Gadadhar Priya. So coming back to the verse of Om, Gadadhar Priya has been like the other day he was telling me, I really want to maybe we could do a podcast together. And I was like, oh my God, what a great idea, because I already tried with 2 French devotees to start a French podcast, and in both cases it just petered out after 2 or 3 episodes. And then I had been praying to Krishna, like, okay, with who can I do a French podcast that has the same experience as me of, doing many years of book distribution, being on the streets and sharing the holy name with people, and, who knows Shastra kind of a little bit, and who's not just a new devotee. And I just couldn't think of anyone. I was thinking Madhavendra, but we're not the same. And, maybe he's too busy. And I'd never thought of Gadadhar Priya, with whom I had done Metra Yoga for so long. And so just a few, like 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, he said he suggested it to me, and I was like, wow, yes, of course. So we paid 30,000 rupees, and we bought a really good mic, kind of similar to this one, just a slightly lower end, but also a Shure. It's just a USB. This is a XLR. And so now he's got his mic, and we thought of, how we're going to call our podcast. What's the title and the subtitle? So the subtitle is Hinduism Today, l'hindouisme aujourd'hui. Because we both agree that the term Hinduism has been appropriated, has been hijacked by Mayavadis, right? And it's not fair that, when you type the word Hinduism or hindouisme in French, all you get is, Mayavadi nonsense. Same thing with Om. And that's where I'm getting at finally. The syllable Om has been completely hijacked by the Mayavadis, right? But, Krishna here says, I am the syllable Om. Om is 100% Bhagavan. It's Krishna himself. And so we said, okay, you know what? We're going to call this podcast Om Hinduism Today. So the podcast is called Om, and what is this podcast? It's Hinduism Today. Om l'hindouisme aujourd'hui. That's how you say it in French. And so we're gonna, we're doing it once a week, and we're really excited about that. So
you'll be calling
Do you
like
got a
various
lot of people
guests?
listening to your podcast?
wait, first Vignesh, what'd you say? Sorry.
You'll be calling various guests like on podcast?
No, we're just gonna do 2 of us. Maybe once a month we'll invite a guest, but he has to speak French, and so maybe we'll invite some guests and cut him down if he's a Mayavadi, and embarrass him, humiliate him in front of his followers, so he never comes back on our podcast again. But I don't know. But mostly it's just gonna be Gadadhar Priya and me, just talking about different key passages from the Gita or key, concepts of Hinduism, but giving the Vaishnava Siddhanta on it, for the French-speaking world. What'd you say, Golokananda Priya?
That's what I was just saying. Since you're going to get guests,
Yeah.
you're getting a lot of people listening to your podcast.
If we get guests, we'll get more people, right? But we don't want to lose our identity as Vaishnavas, and there's only so much Mayavadi garbage that you can just agree with, publicly. Oh yeah, that's it. Oh, you believe we're all one. Oh, I see. That's interesting. Oh yeah, we respect that. I mean, I can't. At one point, it's like, shut up. You are wrong. Like, get out of here. So I don't know if I could handle, diplomatically having. And as far as French-speaking devotees, there's so many few. There's just such a small handful, and I don't want this to be what's his name, Namras's the late morning program podcast.
Yeah.
So it's a great project, but it's a very insider ISKCON project. It's very much for insiders. It's the ISKCON language, and the people who he invites. It's really meant for the upliftment of the ISKCON, not even Gaudiya Vaishnava, just the ISKCON basically community, and that's great. That's one audience, but we want to do something more like Wisdom of the Sages, which is geared towards inspiring devotees, new devotees in their bhakti, but also, a non-devotee potential hearer. And so for that, I don't want to take the risk of inviting ISKCON French-speaking devotees who, first of all, may not have the experience of being, conscious of speaking to an outside world, and may use, language that's specifically, ISKCON specific, and may lose the hearer because he doesn't know what the hell he means by blooping or being fried or, joining, or, there's so many words of ISKCON that are exclusive to ISKCON and which, is only understood in ISKCON. And anyway, even if they were, there's just such a few number of French-speaking devotees, maybe 10, 20 at most, you just go through them really quickly. But yeah, maybe we'll see. We'll see.
You can get some from Montreal.
Yeah, get some from Montreal. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's a good idea. I mean, two of us already is good. Like, look, Raghunath and Kostuva, they're kind of our gold standard because they're the most successful. They're our heroes. And they do an episode every day, like 7 days a week. They're totally in the fire. That's another ISKCON saying, in the fire. Like, what the hell does "in the fire" mean? But in the in the fire of Sankirtan, in the fire of the sacrifice, in the fire of the Sankirtan Yagya, they're totally in the fire.
Fired up.
They're fired up. And they, out of 7 episodes, they do one, I think, only one a week. Out of 7, they do one where they invite a guest. So Gadadhar Priya and I were planning to do just one episode, one a week. So, maybe once a month then, maybe once every 2 months we'll invite a guest. So yeah, so I'm sorry for this, detour, but I wanted to talk about the syllable Om and how, Krishna's saying here, I am the syllable Om, and it's kind of our duty as devotees to bring back to the Vaishnava fold, to reappropriate what is actually supposed to be the Vaishnava's property, so to speak. I mean, we're the property of Krishna, but the syllable Om is Krishna. He says, I am the syllable Om. And so hopefully the time will come when people, when they'll associate Om with Vishnu or Krishna, as opposed to, yoga, Hatha yoga, or some Mayavadi, impersonalism. What do you guys think of Krishna saying, says, I am the mother? Isn't that cool? Not just I am the father, but I'm the mother. Mm-hmm. Okay, text number 18 is who's now? It's Vignesh, right? Oh, okay.
I have done.
I am the goal, the sustainer, the master, the witness, the abode, the refuge, and the most dear friend. I'm the creation and annihilation, the basis of everything, the resting place, and the eternal seed.
Yeah. So we'll finish with 19. I will take a break. I think it's my turn. O Arjuna, I control heat. Yeah, so I mean, come on, man. Can you bring it down a little bit in Uttar Pradesh right now? Because it's like really hot. That's what I would ask Krishna. Anyway, O Arjuna, I control heat. They say, right? They say there's this sort of folk saying that in Vrindavan it's so hard materially because it drives, keeps the materialists away. Oh Arjuna, I control heat. Huh? What?
What about in Mayapur? Is it as hot as Vrindavan?
West Bengal is worse because it's just as hot, maybe 1 or 2 degrees less, but you have this ravaging, devouring humidity, which just makes you just go crazy with pain. The humidity factor with the heat is, for most people, unbearable. Whereas at least in Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, it's dry. It's kind of like, you've been to California, Golokananda Priya?
Yeah.
Southern California, like LA, San Diego.
LA, yeah.
LA, so it's like LA weather. I mean, LA is a desert, like Arizona. So it gets really hot, but you know, it's really hot, but it's a desert, so it's dry. But West Bengal, man, you got the same heat plus this humidity, which just eats at you in a way. So, I'm sorry. O Arjuna, I control the heat, the rain, and the drought. I am immortality, and I am also death personified. Both being and non-being are in me. So two questions. One is, what other verse is similar to where he says here, I am death personified? It's a very famous verse, historically speaking, in terms of international war topics.
Mrityु Sarva.
11.32, no?
I don't know the verse, but what is that? What's the translation?
The time I am the greatest destroyer of the world.
Boom, time I am. Exactly, you both got it in Sanskrit and in English. And just for general education's sake, who quoted this verse? Which famous Western, you know, personality quoted this verse?
Robert Oppenheimer.
Do you have it in front of your screen?
No, I know that.
Wow, you knew that.
The one who invented atom bomb, right? At
Yeah,
the time of World War, he said something on that lines. Now I
Yeah.
have become time. Something like
yeah.
that.
Apparently, when the atom bomb dropped on Hiroshima, he quoted that verse, I am death, and I've taken away, I'm coming, all devouring death. So here again, I am death personified. And both. So what does it mean? Both being and non-being are in me. What does that mean? Right? Sat and asat. I am.
Is that what I mean?
Sat and asat, aham. I mean, it's funny because where you know a little bit better Sanskrit than we do, Vignesh. So Prabhupada says they are in me, right? Being and non-being are in me. But where in the Sanskrit is this in me found?
That is aham. That is I am. Like,
That's I am.
both being and
But
non-being.
that's a difference. I am is different from in me. Hey, do you mind if we quickly go to see what Hridayananda Maharaj's literal translation is here? Oh, you don't have a choice, kiddos. I'm sorry. I'm imposing this on you guys right now. And if you don't like it, you can eat some Mahaprashadam. What's the verse number? Forgive me, I'm just joking. 19. No, but it's interesting. Come on, I mean, this is a good point. Let's hear. You see? Let me share with you again. I'm not that much of a control freak, I promise. Here, it is I who provide warmth and who restrain and release rain. And then I alone am immortality, O Arjuna, and as well as death, being and non-being. So you see, this, you know, Hridayananda Maharaj made the claim that his translation is literal, like really literal, like exactly as the Sanskrit says. So coming back to Prabhupada's translation, we see that the word, you know, the word is, as Vignesh showed, it's aham, right? But Prabhupada says, you know, they're in me, but actually, according to the Sanskrit, it's I am being and I am non-being. I am death, I am immortality. So this verb here, I am, you see, or here, I am, technically also applies to being and non-being. But Prabhupada somehow decided to say that Krishna is saying that being and non-being are in Krishna. You know, we're not passing judgment here, but we're just making an observation of Prabhupada's choice of words, of translations.
The literary should be like I am being and non-being.
At least that's how Rita Anandamarj translates, and it seems like how, even Vignesh and I, seem to. I mean, where is the word in any of the Sanskrit here where he says "in me"? It's
In
just
the
it's
purport,
all
I think
aham.
Prabhupada mentions
Okay, let's read the purport.
the
Go
second
ahead,
paragraph
Vignesh. Or
mentions.
maybe Golokananda Priya, you can read the purport, please. But
Krishna,
okay.
by his different energies, diffuses heat and light through the agency of electricity and the sun. During summer season, it is Krishna who checks rain from falling from the sky, and then during the rainy season, he gives unceasing torrents of rain. The energy which sustains us by prolonging the duration of our life is Krishna. And Krishna meets us at the end as death. By analyzing all these different energies of Krishna, one can ascertain that for Krishna there is no distinction between matter and spirit, or in other words, he is both matter and spirit. In the advanced stage of Krishna consciousness, one does not therefore make eh, one therefore makes such distinction. He sees Krishna's only in everything. Since Krishna is both matter and spirit, the gigantic universal form comprising all of the material manifestation is also Krishna, and his pastime in Vrindavan as two-handed Shamasundar, playing on a flute, are those of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
So when Prabhupada talks about matter and spirit, do you think we can safely say that it's kind of like he's referring to being and non-being, that here maybe being means anything that's conscious and non-being is matter?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
Do you know the verse? I'm looking for it because Prabhupada talks about it in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Stabor jangam deke na deke tar murti sarvatra nija ishtadev sfurti. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
Yeah? Hello? Vignesh,
Yes.
you know that verse?
Yeah, I know that verse.
What is it? 'Cause I'm trying to find it. Please. Stabor jangam deke na deke. I know it because Bhakti Charumaraj used to quote it. I heard it personally from him a few times. Stabor jangam deke na deke tar murti. Does that ring a bell to you, or Golokananda Priya?
No.
8.274.
874
8.274.
point, but it's in Madhya, or what's 8?
Madhya.
Madhya 8-74.
Yeah.
Wow! Congratulations. Let's share it for Golokananda Priya. Look,
Yeah.
because you read it, right? You remember you read the purport, and he says here several times, right, that in the advanced stage of Krishna consciousness, one does not make such distinctions, right?
Yeah.
So, right. So here's a translation. The Mahabhagavad, the advanced devotee, certainly sees everything. So here's mobile and immobile. Okay, but in a way, mobile. The only things that are mobile are things that have consciousness. I mean, I guess mountains even move. Is there anything that's immobile that has consciousness? I don't know. But anyway, he certainly sees everything mobile and immobile, but he does not see exactly their forms. Rather, everywhere he immediately sees manifest the form of the Supreme Lord. And that relates to what we just read here about seeing, not making any distinctions, right? Seeing only Krishna everywhere. So what can we conclude then about being and non-being? Krishna being both being and non-being, or being and non-being being in him?
Matter
I
and
would,
spirit.
yeah,
What-
matter and spirit. That's what I would tend to agree with. What extra insights do you have, Vignesh Ji?
Like it could be like, of course, matter and spirit. Matter could be like maybe a deity. Like we don't consider even a stone to be just a stone, right? We invoke the presence of Lord and spiritualize that matter. So in that sense, even that matter becomes like acts like a spirit. So Krishna is present in everything, like in matter as well as he also exists like separately as Bhagwan, but also exists or he can evoke in matter, and that's how he can pervade everything, both Sat and as well as Asat, matter as well as spirit.
Good point. Listen, it's 8:22 here, so we got 40 minutes left. Do you feel comfortable that we just go on for another, let's say, half hour or 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and we just stop? Or do you want to take a break
Sure.
for 5-10 minutes?
It's good for me.
You're okay. So
Either way.
we're on the roll. Let's just go on, and we can end 10 minutes early and have our, so-called break at the end. So what I suggest here, since we're on the roll, let's just read the next few verses with purports and see where that takes us. Okay, and then we'll tell Madhavendra that we went further than 19. So whose turn is it? It's Vignesh, right?
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yes, Prabhu.
And then you can read the purport as well.
Along with the purport.
Yeah. Because you haven't read these ones yet.
Yeah.
And me also, so.
Yeah. Text 20. Those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. They take birth on the planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights. Purport. The word Trividya refers to the three Vedas, Sam, Yajur, and Rig. A Brahmana who has studied these three Vedas is called a Trivedi. Anyone who is very much attached to knowledge derived from these three Vedas is respected in society.
Trivedi. Have you ever met a Trivedi Brahmin?
Yeah.
You have?
We have a lot of Trivedis in India.
A lot of Trivedi in India.
Respect.
There's
But
a
you know
surname,
what?
a lot of surnames.
It's amazing how you can recognize a Brahmin, though. Like in Vrindavan, I spot them immediately, They're clean, they have fine features, they're dressed, I don't know, you can just so often just like, that's a Brahmin. And I always do, hey Panditji! And then they turn around and thinking, okay, is he making fun of me or what? And then, they show that I show I'm sincere, and I just, go Brahmana hitaya cha, right? Krishna says, let's be generous. Even if they're Mayavadis, they're Brahmins. Krishna says, I like Brahmins. So, Panditji, Hare Krishna. Although I'm so happy to be from the, Adhokshaja Gotra, or what is it? Achintya Gotra or Adhokshaja, or what is it? When you go to Puri, they ask you, what Achyuta Gotra? Because it's just freedom. I'm free. I don't belong to any goddamn caste. I'm just a Vaishnava, aspiring Vaishnava. It's so much better. But it's interesting how you see these Brahmin communities, generated generation after generation. They have this biological, recognizable feature, of Brahmins in many cases. Anyway, please go on. Sorry. Vignesh? Hello? Vignesh is stunned. What happened? Hey!
Yeah, I think his internet.
Oh, his internet died?
What happened?
Then you read it.
Oh, the Trividya refers to the free Vedas, Sama, Yajur, and Rig. A Brahmana who has studied these free Vedas is called a Trivedi. Anyone who is very much attached to knowledge derived from these free Vedas is respected in society. Unfortunately, there are many scholars of the Vedas who do not know the ultimate purport of studying them. Therefore, Krishna herein declares himself to be the ultimate goal of the Trivedis. Actual Trivedis take shelter under the lotus feet of Krishna and engage in pure devotional service to satisfy the Lord. Devotional service begins with the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra and side by side trying to understand Krishna in truth. Unfortunately, those who are simply official student of the Vedas become more interested in offering sacrifices to the different demigods like Indra, Chandra. By such endeavor, the worshipper of different demigods are certainly purified of the contamination of the lower qualities of nature and are thereby elevated to the higher planetary systems or heavenly planets known as Maharloka, Janoloka, Tapoloka, etc. Once situated on the higher planetary system, one can satisfy his senses hundreds and thousands of times better than on this planet.
First time when I went to Mayapur, Kolakananapriya, I was 20 years old, totally spaced out. I went with Madhavendra Puri actually and his former wife Leela Madhuri, and we arrived late at night, and the next morning I slept in, and I remember I somehow made my way to the temple room first time. Actually, no, the first time was the day before. There was this amazing Sandhya Arti with devotees jumping. It was huge deities I'd never seen. But I remember the next morning I came into it was Jayapataka Swami giving a Bhagavatam class. So I came in, I just sat in the back, and I always remember as soon as I sat down, he was saying, the Prabhupada said that many of his disciples will go to the heavenly planets. And then he said, but that's horrible. That's horrible because by the time you get to the heavenly planets, by the time you come back to earth, Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement will be finished.
Yeah.
Okay, Vignesh, it's your turn. No, it's my turn. We thought that you had become transfixed like the cowherd boy who was waiting for Krishna's return. We're talking about the glories of the Brahmins. You became stunned. Okay. Text 21. When they have thus enjoyed heavenly sense pleasure, they return to this mortal planet again. Kshinye martya lokam vishanti, right? Kshinye punye martya lokam vishanti. That's the famous line. Kshinye punye martya lokam vishanti. When they have thus enjoyed the heavenly sense pleasure, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, through Vedic principle, they achieve only flickering happiness. They enjoy only flickering happiness. Thus having to, let me just read Anamarja's translation. I'd like to do that. Don't mind. It's always interesting. Not that we, go over Prabhupada's in any way, but it's interesting to hear, a Sanskrit scholar, a Vaishnava Sanskrit scholar. So here, having exhausted the vast heavenly world and exhausted their merit, they again enter the mortal world. Thus, having duly pursued Triveda Dharma and their wished for wishes, they achieve only going and coming. They achieve only going and coming. How beautiful. Prabhupada translates it as, only flickering happiness, right? He says right here, as only, they achieve only flickering happiness. But another way to say it is that they achieve only coming and going, up and down. What's another interesting thing I find, if I may, Krishna talks about, planet Earth as mortal, but you tell me, are the heavenly planets mortal?
Mortal, right?
Huh?
Everything is mortal. Right?
Yeah.
Everything is mortal, right?
Even the heavenly planets are they may not be annihilated, but people die there. Physical bodies die. No one lives eternally. So it's interesting that Krishna,
People from the heavenly planet, they go there, they have to come back to the mortal, to the material world.
But they're already in the material world. That's my point. the Devalokas, the heavenly planets, are part of the material world. So it's interesting. Why would Krishna?
Earthly planet.
Huh?
Earthly planet.
Earthly planet. Krishna calls it Martya Loka. On est d'accord. But you know, Krishna says Abrahma Bhuvana Loka Punar Avartin Arjuna. You know, the heavenly planets is also Martya Loka. Right? So it's interesting that, you know, he talks about Svargaloka and Martya Loka. But actually, even Svargaloka is Martya Loka, correct? So it's interesting how, I mean, I don't have an explanation here. I wish I could, you know.
Maybe maybe duration of lifetime is very short here. Maybe that's why Krishna is referring to Martya.
But there's still a duration of life in the heavenly planets, right? They don't live forever.
Yeah. That is true. Comparatively, I think time span is very so short that
maybe that's all there is, huh? Like compared to the heavenly planets, when they look down, they just see death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's horrible. That's horrible for us. That's what we look. That's, you know, that's the spectacle. You know, our glorious lives of romance and marriages and gotras and, you know, adventures in the eyes of the demigods is just, you know, flickering births and deaths that are so quick that we're just calling it the place of birth, of death. You know, Martya Loka. Yuck! I feel like an
Once
ant.
upon a time for them.
I feel like an ant in the eyes of the demigods. Okay, purport. One who is promoted to those higher planetary systems enjoys a longer duration of life and better facilities for sense enjoyment. Yet, one is not allowed to stay there forever. I'll ask you at the end of this purport a reference. If you can give me the reference, bravo, to the Srimad Bhagavatam about coming back. But not necessarily from the heavenly planets, but from the position of liberation. So I'll continue and then we'll go to that. One is again sent back to this earthly planet upon finishing the resultant fruits of pious activities. He who has not attained perfection of knowledge, as indicated in the Vedanta Sutra, Janmadhyayasyataha, or in other words, he who fails to understand Krishna, the cause of all causes, becomes baffled in achieving the ultimate goal of life, and it is thus subjected to the routine of being promoted to the higher planets and then again coming down, as if situated on a Ferris wheel, which sometimes goes up and sometimes goes down. Kshinya punya martya lokam vishanti. The purport is that instead of being elevated to the spiritual world where there is no longer any possibility of coming down, although there is, right? We do believe that each soul has that minute capacity. Independence. Oh, by the way, as a small parentheses, you know the famous Kirtaniya, Akinchana Krishna Prabhu? He's often invited to the Sadhu Sangha festival. He's got glasses. He lives in Vrindavan. And he agrees with me that, you know, the soul always have free will to fall. And that's why, you know, he also believes in the fall of the soul from Goloka. And he gave this great analogy. He said, yeah, the way I explain it is this way, or he heard it maybe from someone. But, you know, if you can go to the top of the Empire State Building, you know, the highest building in New York. And, you know, usually like no one can fall from up there. Like there's, you know, but if you really want to fall from the roof, from the top of the Empire State Building, you can. So, you know, generally no one falls from the Empire State Building, but if you really want, you can. So, but anyway, Prabhupada here also,
That's a very nice analogy.
Yeah, I like it also. So, the purport is that instead of being elevated to the spiritual world where there is no longer any possibility of coming down, one simply revolves in the cycle of birth and death on higher and lower planetary system. What's the verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita? Brahmando.
That one?
Yeah. One should better take to the spiritual world to enjoy eternal life full of bliss and knowledge and never return to this miserable material existence. So what's the verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam that resembles this idea of Kshinya Punya Martya Lokam Vishanti, but it doesn't refer to coming back to this plane from the heavenly planets? It refers to coming back from an artificial state of liberation.
That one, the famous that the Advandaksha Vimuktamanina.
Yep, exactly. Very, very good, Prabhu. Yenyera vindaksha vimuktamanina stoyastabhavajra vishuddha buddhaya aruhya krichrena parampadam tata patanti ada anatrita yushmadangraya. Those rascal Mayavadis, because they have disregarded the lotus feet of you, the person, Krishna, even though they raise themselves to a false, concocted, speculated notion of liberation, after sooner or later, they fall back down. Right?
What verse is that in Bhagavatam?
We will tell you right now. Ye nye ravindaksha. Ye nye ravindaksha vimukta 10:232. 10:230. This is like the weapon, in terms of Shastra. Okay? I mean, hey, it's funny. Shastra is a weapon, right? This verse is the, Bhagavatam verse for defeating Mayavadis. Aruhya krichrena, let me share it with you here. Aruhya krichrena parampadam tata patanti ada anadrita yushmadangraya. And aruhya krichrena. So even though they get to the parampadam, still patanti ada. Patanti ada, if I'm not mistaken, means patanti, they fall. Ada, down into material existence again. Patanti ada. Right? Why? Anadrita, because they neglected devotion to your angrayaha, to the lotus feet of who? Of Aravindaksha. Right? And they're just, their liberation is only in their mind, manina. They just think themselves liberated, but they're not. Right? O lotus-eyed Lord, although non-devotees who accept severe austerities and penances to achieve the highest position may think themselves liberated, their intelligence is impure. They fall down from their position of imagined superiority. Yeah, Mayavadis are like, oh, right? I mean, you see in Lord Chaitanya, the mere sentimentalists, right? Their position of imagined superiority, because they have no regard for your lotus feet. All right, text 22. Well, let me read the translation again. When they have thus enjoyed heavenly sense pleasure, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, through Vedic principles, they achieve only flickering happiness. Go ahead, Vignesh Prabhu.
Text 22. But those who worship me with devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and preserve what they have.
What a beautiful verse.
Purport. One who is unable to live for a moment without Krishna consciousness cannot but think of Krishna 24 hours, being engaged in devotional service by hearing, chanting, remembering, offering prayers, worshipping, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, rendering other services, cultivating friendship, and surrendering fully to the Lord. Such activities are all auspicious and full of spiritual potencies. Indeed, they make the devotee perfect in self-realization. Then his only desire is to achieve the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is called yoga. By the mercy of Lord, such a devotee never comes back to this material condition of life. Shema refers to the merciful protection of the Lord. The Lord helps the devotee to achieve Krishna consciousness by yoga. And when he becomes fully Krishna conscious, the Lord protects him from falling down to miserable condition life.
Allow me to share with you this analogy that I often think of when I read this verse. It's an analogy you find in Christian circles. You know, there's a story of this man who goes to heaven, and then he's looking at, or a woman, and he's looking at the footsteps of his life in the sand of a beach, right? Or whatever. I mean, it's on the bank of a beach. It could be on the bank of a river, or wherever you can, have footprints. And he sees that throughout most of his life, there's another pair of footsteps right next to him. And they're God's footsteps. You heard that one, Vignesh? So it made me. So then he asked God, but look, I don't understand, because the times in my life when it was really difficult for me, it was the most difficult times in my life. You disappeared. Your footsteps are gone. It's just one pair of footsteps on the sand. Just when I needed you the most, you disappear. And then God says, no, actually, in those times, I picked you up and I was carrying you. And those were my footsteps that you see on the sand. So it's the same thing here. To them, I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. Go ahead, read the purport. Oh, you read it already. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, this is good for devotees to remember, isn't it? Like, don't worry. Just, don't be irresponsible in your, that's one of the things in the Nectar of Devotion that struck me when I read it last. Prabhupada's Rupa Goswami says one should not be neglectful in ordinary dealings. So that means, don't be neglectful with keeping your house clean, with keeping your checking, your finances straight. Don't be neglectful towards your family members, your job responsibilities. Like, one should not be neglectful in ordinary dealings. At the same time, one should have faith that Krishna's got our back and he carries what we lack, He preserves what we have and he carries what we lack. Okay. Vivekananda Priya, one or two more verses.
Okay. Whatever a man may sacrifice to other gods, O son of Kunti, is really meant for me alone, but it is offered without true understanding. Persons who engage in the worship of demigods are not very intelligent. Although such worship is done by me indirectly.
Isn't it cool that Prabhupada is like paraphrasing Krishna? He's like, what Krishna is actually saying is this. I mean, wow, who is Prabhupada,
Krishna says, for example, when a man pours water on the leaves and branches of a tree without pouring water on the root, he does so without sufficient knowledge or without observing the regulative principles. Similarly, the process of rendering service to the different parts of the body is to supply food to the stomach. The demigod are, so to speak, different officers and directors in the government of the Supreme Lord. One has to follow the laws made by the government, not by the officers or directors. Similarly, everyone is to offer his worship to the Supreme Lord only. That will automatically satisfy the different officers and directors of the Lord. The officers and directors are engaged as representative of the government. To offer some bribe to the officers and the directors is illegal.
But that's always done.
This is state,
especially in India.
This stated here as avidi purvakam. In other words, Krishna doesn't approve the unnecessary worship of the demigods.
Right. Okay, text 24. Yeah, let's just do one or two more and then we'll chant a little bit and we'll stop. See, this purport is short and then the next one is also short. So let's see, maybe we'll have things to talk about in this one. Text 24. One thing, the theme, one of the main themes, I know Vignesh, you came up with a really nice thing, this theme of, being Shama, being equal. One thing I thought of though, that you find a lot in these verses, I'm referring to one of the questions, is how much Krishna is emphasizing that he's a person, right? Again and again, he's talking about him being a person. Anyway, coming here, translation. I am the only enjoyer and the only object of sacrifice. What verse does this remind you of? Well, actually, you would only know it if you read the Gita before because, no, actually, it's in the 5th chapter.
Bhakti.
Exactly, very good. I'm the only...
Awesome.
Those who do not recognize my true transcendental nature fall down. Purport. Here it is clearly stated, we'll end here and we'll just chant and be done. Here it is clearly stated, Prabhupada says, that there are many types of yajna performances recommended in the Vedic literatures. But actually, all of them are meant for satisfying the Supreme Lord. Yajna means Vishnu. In the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly stated that one should only work for satisfying yajna or Vishnu. The perfectional form of human civilization, known as Varnashram Dharma, is specifically meant for satisfying Vishnu. Therefore, Krishna says in this verse, I am the enjoyer of all sacrifices because I am the Supreme Master. However, less intelligent persons, without knowing this fact, worship demigods for temporary benefit. Therefore, they fall down to material existence and do not achieve the desired goal of life. If, however, anyone has any material desire to be fulfilled, he had better pray for it to the Supreme Lord, although that is not pure devotion, and he will thus achieve the desired result. What's the verse from the Bhagavatam here that Prabhupada's referring to? I think it's from the 2nd canto.
Yeah, Akamo Purusho, Akamo Sarvakamo.
Vignesh, you don't need to take this Bhakti Shastri course.
I've heard of this.
I know. He's so like.
This is some of the very famous words often recited in various purports. So
Still though. Akama sarvakamo va moksha kama udaraditi vrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of material desires, without any material desire, or desiring liberation, must by all means, with this tivrena bhakti yogena. I like this word tivrena. Tivrena means with great force, intense, a forceful, a strong type of bhakti. Tivrena bhakti yogena. By all means, worship the Supreme Whole, the personality of Godhead. Jai. Okay, Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. So I'll mute you, we'll do 5 minutes of kirtan, and then off we go to our different destinations. Vignesh and I are going to go to bed, and Golokananda Priya, you're going to do all sorts of wonderful things on the Sunday feast program.
I'll go at 4:30.
Jai. In the dome house temple, huh?
Oh, I told you I'm in Philadelphia.
Oh my God, that's right. I'm sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, you just remembering me from North Carolina.
Yeah. I'm totally fixated on you from North Carolina.
Yeah.
So it's fired up now, right? In Philly, there's a lot of young preachers and.
Where in?
Philly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Okay. All right. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga Gaurahari. Nitai Gauranga Gaurahari. Jaya Sachinandana, Jaya Sachinandana. Jaya Sachinandana, Jaya Sachinandana. Jaya Sachinandana Gaurahari. Jaya Sachinandana Gaurahari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Vrindavan Das Thakur, Vrindavan Das Thakur, Vrindavan Das Thakur, Jaya Vrindavan Das Thakur. Jai. Bhakti Shastri Chorus Ki Jai. Bhakti Shastri
Jai.
students Ki Jai. Okay, Prabhus, thank you for this great association, and I look forward that we meet again when we meet again in 2 weeks.
Thank you very much for all the nice anecdote you give.
Hare Krishna,
Metro
Jai.
And next time
Paris.
you'll be in France.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
Thank you. Next time, Krishna willing, I'll be in Spain.
Oh,
Yeah.
The time will be different.
Oh yeah. So yeah, let's discuss about what works for you, because yeah, I won't be able to do it that late. I mean, yeah, I could, but I would rather that we go back to,
Like 10
yeah,
original
same
time,
time.
not maybe.
What time do you do it with Madhavendra?
Same time,
Which is
10
what?
o'clock, isn't it?
10 o'clock East Coast. So that's 4
Yeah.
p.m. Yeah, that should work. But maybe the Sunday feast is at that time. So, but let's see. I'm gonna give the class. Yeah, that Sunday I'll be giving class. So anyway, let us see. Let us see. Harbo,
Haribo.
thank you.
Jai
Hare
Prabhupada,
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.